Hey y'all, welcome back to TXC Tells All, or welcome if it's your first time joining us. So today I want to talk about five hardest things about being a lawyer. So if you're new to the channel, both Larita and I are attorneys in our other life, and we practice law every day, and I really thought it was important to do a video on this for our future attorneys out there, or even just to chat it up with our current attorneys or law school students about what is really the top five hardest things about being a lawyer. So watch this video till the end if you want to know what I think about that. I think we need to talk about it. I definitely need to talk about it. So excuse me if I'm venting a little bit on this, but there are some tough things about being a lawyer. So let's get right into it. Okay, so let's start with number five, client management, or managing client expectations. I would say that is a really difficult thing in being an attorney, because having a law firm or practicing as part of a law firm, it's a business. So you have to weigh, of course, bringing clients in, but you're also providing a service, and the clients that you're providing that service to expect you to get them the results, right? But obviously, if somebody is coming to a lawyer about a legal issue, it's usually not something that they're well versed in. So they're relying on the attorney to advise them on A, what can happen, B, what might happen, and C, what the lawyer can do for them. Best case and worst case scenarios, right? So when you get a new client, you have to manage their expectations. Of course, you want to promise them that you can help them and possibly get them the best result in the situation. But you also have to weigh the law. What's practical? What can actually happen? What does the law say? How does the law apply to that situation? And you want to make sure that you balance what the client expects from you as far as what you can do, what your ability is as an attorney to get this situation resolved for them the best way possible. But also, as attorneys, our hands are sometimes tied by the law. So when you speak to a new client, you definitely have to explain to them what they need to expect. And I always tell clients up front, I want to be as honest with my clients as possible. Of course, I am confident in my abilities to hopefully resolve the issue for them. But I want them to know up front, that's what you hired me for. You hired me to make sure that you get legal advice. So part of me providing that legal advice is managing your expectations and making sure that your expectations are realistic under the law based on your situation. Let me tell y'all, that can sometimes be so hard. I mean, I'm a civil litigator, so the issues that I'm dealing with in employment law sometimes are people, being terminated from their job wrongfully, race discrimination cases, disability discrimination, pregnancy discrimination. So my clients are out of work a lot of times and feel like they've been done wrong and want to do something about it. But I also have to manage their expectations about what result they can actually obtain at the end of litigation or at the end of a settlement negotiation. So sometimes, people listen to what you're saying, but they want to hear what they want to hear. And that, I think, sometimes is one of the most difficult parts about being an attorney, is that it is your job not only to provide a service, but also to manage the client's expectations. If you are an attorney, comment in the comment section below. Tell me about your experience with managing client expectations. I'm sure you have stories for days, just like I do. Future law students, this is an invaluable skill if you are in an internship right now or looking for internships, especially if you want to be a litigator. I would say ask your partners that you work for or the attorneys that you're working with if you can sit in on their initial client consultations, because that's really where you'll see an attorney manage client expectations. Now, of course, you'll see them in the follow-up meetings with clients, but I always say to my aspiring attorneys, current law students, get that experience now while you can. So if you're working for a veteran and they have meetings with clients, especially those initial consultations, ask if you can sit in on them, because it definitely will help you in the future manage client expectations, which is number five, on my list of the hardest things about being an attorney. All right, number 4 on the list of hardest things about being an attorney, dealing with opposing counsel. Now, sometimes you get opposing counsel who is great to work with. Now, obviously, if they're opposing counsel, they have a job to do and you have a job to do. And usually, you guys are on different sides of the coin. They're going to be trying to protect their client and you're going to be trying to protect yours. So, obviously, you're not going to see eye to eye. But there are attorneys who you can work with and everybody can be professional and understand this is just a job and we are both just providing a service, and that doesn't mean that we have to be nasty with each other or not considerate of real life issues that happen with attorneys sometimes, and other times you just have opposing counsel that are incredibly difficult to deal with. And I think that is number 4 on my list of hardest things about being an attorney, because there's no way around that. If you get on a case, you don't know who opposing counsel is going to be. So you have to be prepared for anything. And now you could be dealing with this attorney for a year to 2 years in civil litigation in a case. Then if that person is completely impossible to deal with, you still have to work to try to get your client the best result possible. So that is number 4 on my list. Dealing with opposing counsel can sometimes be really, really, really difficult when you're dealing with a difficult personality. I'll also say, I've been practicing for about 8 years now. But, in the field, I mean, you have attorneys who have been practicing 20, 30 years. So some of those attorneys still look at me, even though I've been practicing 8 years now, as a baby attorney. And sometimes people will try you. They'll think that opposing counsel will think that you may not know what you're talking about, or because you don't have as much experience as they do, they really might try you. And it makes it really difficult. Sometimes not only are you trying to prove yourself to the client and make sure your client trusts you, but then you also have to prove yourself to opposing counsel and make sure that they understand that you also know what you're doing and are going to work as hard as possible for your client. So you have it coming from all sides. You have client expectations, and then you have opposing counsel that you're dealing with. So it can just get really difficult. But I would say that's number 4 on my list. Dealing with opposing counsel can be really tough sometimes. Now, number 3 on my list of the hardest things about being an attorney is dealing with discovery. Now, I know this is not the same in every field. So, like I said, I'm a civil litigator. So, I'm doing employment law, which is very discovery intensive. Discovery is part of the biggest part of employment discrimination cases in a lot of ways. So, I mean, when I say discovery, it's the part of the law, the part of the lawsuit where you're exchanging documents, you're taking depositions or defending depositions, and it is a lot of work. I mean that, but I always say, this is one thing that I always say in my experience, you win and lose cases in discovery a lot of times. So it's so important. But the reason why I think it's really hard is because you are a lot of times going through thousands of documents. Now, imagine this. You have a case, an employment discrimination case, where somebody has been working for the company for 35 years. So when you ask a question to the employer or the former employer in discovery and say, I want to see everything that was in this employee, my client's file, personnel file. When you're talking about 35 years, that can be thousands and thousands of documents. But you could find, and I have found, a needle in the haystack in discovery that helped me literally win the case. So discovery can be really tedious because it's so much reading. You have to really pay attention to detail. It's time sensitive, so you only have a certain amount of time to conduct discovery, and then you have to also work with your client to make sure you get documents from them to produce to the other side. So it's so many things going on. It's so deadline driven, and it can be really, really difficult. So I would say, and this can be different. I know in other areas of law that might be more transactional, it can be, a little different. Comment in the comment section below if you do a different area of law and you feel like discovery isn't really your issue. You may have some other issues that I haven't talked about in this video, but I would say discovery is definitely a really hard part about being a lawyer. So again, to my future attorneys and law students, learn some stuff about discovery now. If you're doing some internships, I know it sucks sometimes doing discovery and internships. I've been there, but it can really help you work through that process when you're actually the lead attorney and you already know how to do some of this stuff. All right, so number two on my list of the hardest things or five hardest things about being an attorney, I would say is the hours. Now, every attorney job is not the same. Some people work more and some people work less. Some attorneys work more, some attorneys work less. I will tell you though, with civil litigation, you usually are going to work some long hours, and it's just always a deadline. I mean, that's the way litigation works. In the beginning of the lawsuit, you usually get a scheduling order from the judge that kind of outlines how the case is going to run, when things are due, when motions are due, when responses are due, discovery, all of that. It's very deadline driven, and it causes you to have to work a lot. I mean, if you're a civil litigator, you have multiple cases going on at one time. So you can have a week where you really have four deadlines in a 5 day work period. And that's why a lot of times attorneys don't work regular hours, because there can just be times where you have so much work to do with the same deadline for 4 or 5 different cases, and you're expected to just get it done. I mean, there's really no way around the long hours with a lot of different types of law. Like I said before, with number three in discovery, being a hard part about being an attorney, you're looking at thousands of documents. You have to communicate with opposing counsel. You have to communicate with your clients, whether your client is an individual or a company. You are going to have a lot of demands on your time, and that usually requires that you work pretty long hours. I would say a 40-hour work week is usually not the standard for a civil litigator. And, we just have to work more and get it done. So that can be really challenging sometimes. You have to make sure that you pay attention to work life balance. But at the same time, you have to pay attention to the deadlines. I mean, if a client hires you to do a job, they don't want to hear, I was too tired and I just couldn't get it done. You're expected to get it done as an attorney. You're expected to meet that deadline for all of your clients. So working long hours is just a lot of times part of the job, but I would say it can be really difficult, really tiring, and that's why you have to work hard but play hard too. Shameless plug for my videos on my vacationing, because I do try to work hard but also play hard too. If you haven't checked out my videos on my trips to Cancun and Belize, make sure you check those out. Because they may be places that you want to visit too. If you are an attorney and you find yourself watching this video and saying, I totally agree with her, I am burnt out, maybe it's time you take a vacation. So make sure you check those videos out. Okay, so number one on my five hardest parts about being an attorney kind of goes to this article that I read that Above the Law did on 11 things that attorneys wish people knew about them. And one of the things was that they mentioned was, you may win, saying you, the client, you being the client, may win and still be unhappy. And I think that is such a hard thing for both the client and the attorney, right? So, for example, let's say I had this case that I worked on really, really hard, and I got the client the best possible result under the law. I mean, not to toot my own horn or anything, but honestly, it was the best result that we could have gotten under the circumstances. And the client was so unhappy, so unhappy. And it was a hard situation. I understood this; these are people's lives, and usually in my employment discrimination cases, we're not litigating, about something that's pleasant. We're litigating about somebody losing their job, losing their income, most of the time unexpectedly. So, I did all this work and I really, really fought for the client, and the case went on for over a year, and we ended up getting the best possible. I mean, it was a great result as far as what the law was saying and what happened in the circumstance. And the client was still unhappy. And it was such a hard hit, I think, to my professional and personal ego, um, because I still had to manage that I had done a good job as an attorney, but that this person was still feeling like they had lost, even though they really had won. So I think that really is a hard, hard pill to swallow. But all in all, I mean, these are five of the hardest things that I think that I could think of about being an attorney as it applies to, my experience. But there also are great things about being an attorney. So if you're an aspiring law student or future attorney or current law student, don't let this discourage you.